Sarah, will you please provide instruction on interpretation services?
Absolutely. I was just watching our attendees roll in. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. There's a globe icon near the hand feature on your screen. This will allow you to listen and participate in tonight's event in Spanish.
Muy buenas noches. A las personas que hablan español, estamos usando la función de interpretación de Zoom. La encontrará en su pantalla en la parte inferior con el icono de globo. Desde ahí selecciona canal de español. Si está en tableta o móvil, se lo selecciona de los 3 puntos al lado de su pantalla. Gracias. Thank you.
Our interpreters this evening are Lorna Silva and Ashley Nunez. Thank you both for your time and services this evening. Chair Ariano, when you're ready, we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the City of Menlo Park Independent Redistricting Commission. This is the regular meeting of January 27th, 2022. This is a teleconference meeting with IRC members, city staff, members of the public, all participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing during this federal, state, and local emergency. Roll call, I would like to introduce the staff and the commissioners and staff present. Vice Chair Gilmer, Commissioners Ballas, Earhart, Walter, Saad, Hill, and alternate commissioners Marquardt and Kissel. And from the city staff, we have City Clerk Judy Herron and Administrative Assistant Sarah Sandoval. Ms. Sandoval, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how tonight's meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Ariano and members of the IRC. Welcome everyone to this evening's meeting and thank you for attending. At this time, we ask that all members of the IRC remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to members of the advisory body. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comments, after the chair calls for public comments on the item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And for those who are calling in from a landline or cell phone, please press *9 to raise your virtual hand. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. And that brings us to our public comment segment of the agenda. Under public comment, the public may address the Independent Redistricting Commission on any subject not listed on tonight's agenda. Each speaker may address the IRC once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or the political jurisdiction in which you live. Also note that the IRC cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore we cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Ms. Sandoval, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment this evening?
Thank you, Chair. At this time, if any member of the public wishes to comment on a subject not listed on the agenda, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, please press *9 now. This will be our final call for public comment on any subject not listed on the agenda. And seeing no hands raised, Chair Ariano, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, consent calendar. Consent calendar is routine business. We take action to approve all consent calendar items in one motion unless a commissioner, city staff member, or member of the public requests that an item be discussed individually or continued to a later date. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar?
At this time, if any member of the public would wish to make public comment on the consent calendar, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. or if you are calling in from a landline or cell phone, please press *9. Again, Chair, we have no hands. I'll turn it back over to you.
Do any of my fellow commissioners or member of city staff wish to discuss our meeting minutes from December 9th? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar.
Thank you, Commissioner Ballas. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Sandoval, please state the motion and call for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Ballas and seconded by Commissioner Earhart to approve the consent calendar. Are there any further commission discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none by roll call vote. Commissioner Ballas?
Oh, I apologize. I did have a comment.
Okay,
I did not attend the meeting of December 18th. However, I did review the video and the agenda, and so I am comfortable voting on that item.
thank you, Chair Ariano. By roll call vote, Commissioner Ballas,
Yes.
Commissioner Earhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Sod,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gilmer,
Yes.
and Chair Ariano.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. And we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, E, regular business. Item E1, City Clerk Herron.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the IRC. Item E1 today is to review and provide direction on the IRC's regular meeting schedule and format. Some background information on this item. The Commission did approve a regular meeting schedule at their November 18th, 2021 meeting. That was provided as an attachment to that staff report as well as this staff report. I did want to note that the public hearing scheduled for January 13th was rescheduled to tonight, January 27th. So that was incorrect, unfortunately, on the attachment, but I'm updating you all now. It is the request of staff that the Commission review that schedule and either discuss remaining fully Zoom or fully virtual, if there were hybrid options that you wanted to explore. And again, that is what staff is looking for. So that concludes my introduction for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sandoval, do any members of the public wish to provide comment on item E1?
Thank you, Chair Ariano. At any time, if any member of the public wishes to comment on item E1, they can engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of their screen or press *9 on their landline or cell phone. This will be our final call for public comment on item E1. Seeing no hands raised, Chair Ariano, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Do any members of the Commission wish to discuss the meeting schedule, format, any other questions or concerns about item E1? I see a couple of hands. Commissioner Sod, please.
Chair Ariano, I reviewed the material that was provided for this meeting, and I don't think that there are any inconvenience or I would say burden on the staff for us to have a hybrid meeting. I understand that the Omicron situation made it difficult for the past month or so, but I definitely think personally, if there are no objections, given that there's no extra burden on the staff, that we do consider the fact to have a hybrid meeting to give the public an opportunity to attend in person. And so also the commissioners be able also to see each other and be more interactive.
Thank you. Anything further, Commissioner Saad?
Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Okay. Vice Chair Gilmer.
I was actually going to say something similar. I think that I would like to encourage us to do at least one more hybrid meeting when we roll out or we start looking at the maps to encourage more interaction with the community. So allowing for in-person or virtual at that point in a hybrid model, I think might be helpful for people who wish to show up in person and see the at least the initial maps that we're looking at. So I would encourage us to consider at least one hybrid. Hopefully Omicron has passed and we're in better shape, but I'd encourage us to look at one hybrid at that point at least. And that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk Karen, can I ask a question about the schedule here?
Yes, please.
So I'm looking at the lines for yes, the different public hearings, and you have a parenthetical that says pre-map and then one that says post-map. Could you just clarify what that means? And then maybe we can discuss if the commission has any interest in doing so, the potential for a hybrid meeting and incorporating the timing issue that Vice Chair Gilmer pointed out.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we are required to have at minimum 2 public hearings before we start reviewing maps. Those public hearings are to discuss communities of interest, to get input from the public. That's not to say people cannot submit maps. You can submit maps at any time, but we cannot bring those to the commission until we've had 2, as we're calling them, pre-map public hearings. For the post-map public hearings, again, we are required to have a minimum of 2 post-map public hearings where the commission will be receiving and discussing maps that are submitted, whether they're hand-drawn maps, if they're submitted on our districtor tool. That's what those 2 hearings are for. Also on the attachment, it does show some just regular meetings where the same information can, be discussed. We can still gather input. We're just not noticing them as, a public hearing. We just wanted to have a few more meetings than that minimum requirement of 4, which is 2 pre-map public hearings, 2 post-map public hearings. So that kind of explains the pre and post and then the regular meetings.
Okay. Can I ask one follow-up question? So if we receive public comment or we decide to review different maps from the ones previously considered at an earlier meeting, does that restart the clock, so to speak? Do we then have to conduct the minimum of 4 public hearings, or 2 public hearings rather, after considering those different maps?
So I might have missed some of that. I'm not sure if it was just my audio, but Denise, our assistant city attorney is here. Maybe she has the response.
Yeah, so I did hear the question, Chair, and I would say no, it does not restart the clock. So the idea is just to have 2 public hearings where the commission is talking about communities of interest or just the boundaries that exist currently before the commission jumps into drawing the maps. And so then after those 2 pre-map hearings, the commission will focus on, maps afterwards and have at least 2 public hearings, talking about the maps themselves and drawing and revising maps and reviewing maps that have been submitted.
Okay. I understand. I see a couple of other hands, so let me put it back to the commission. Commissioner Ballas.
There we go. Thanks. Chair, and I apologize if this was covered before. I was looking at the schedule and I know we had to delay the 113 meeting. So tonight's meeting is actually the first public hearing pre-map, if I interpret that correctly. Will there be another meeting scheduled added to the schedule to replace that? Or do we have some slack in the number of meetings?
I think that's a question for City Clerk Karen.
Thank you. Great question, Commissioner Ballas. So this meeting was replacing that public hearing from January 13th. So when we think about the public hearing requirement, we have met that. The commission can definitely add meetings if they wanted to. So again, that would just be direction that we would need looking at calendars and schedules. I would say I would like a little bit of time if we do decide to add a meeting or a couple of meetings, that's fine, just to make sure it doesn't overlap with any of our other advisory bodies or city council meetings. Typically Thursdays are a fairly good day. And again, time, we can be flexible based on the commission's availability.
And then follow-up question, is the final map deadline of April 17th, that's a hard deadline?
Yes.
Okay.
That's when the files do need to be at the county. I would like to note that also March 25th is the deadline to receive maps, and that is also a hard deadline.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to Commissioner Saad, then Vice Chair Gilmer.
Yeah, Chair Ariano, given what we just heard about having the March and April, the submission date and the final submission of the maps, I would highly encourage us maybe to insert a meeting just to make up for the last one of January 13th. It's just because I think we're getting really close. I'm a very antsy person by nature in terms of trying to make sure all the ducks are in a row and we have exhaustive discussions and we gave the public enough heads up for that purpose. I know the next meeting, the agenda item would be on the public engagement, and I think we should also put this more on the fast track to be able to encourage the public to review the maps and give input. But I highly recommend that we add one meeting prior to March deadline, so we have enough interaction to complete the job as it should.
Okay. I do want to get to Vice Chair Gilmer's question. Could you clarify when you say highly recommend, is that a motion you would like to put on the table?
Yes, I would put it in legal terms. It's a motion. I would like to have a motion to add one meeting, please, to the calendar as City Clerk Karen see fit, as she mentioned, to make sure that we don't have any conflicts and there's availability of the chambers in case we decide to have a hybrid meeting.
Okay, so okay, so there's a motion on the table to add a meeting. I'm going to guess, Commissioner Saad, that would be sometime before March 25th, which is the last day to submit. So
that is correct.
So there is a motion on the table to add a makeup meeting, if you will. Is there a second?
Before we vote on the motion, can I make a comment related to this motion?
If it is related to the motion, you can make it after we second, if there is a second.
Okay.
So
I'll second.
okay, seconded by Commissioner Earhart. Comments, Vice Chair Gilmer.
I was just going to say, I'm in favor of having an additional meeting, but I would want us to work with the public engagement manager, Clay Curtin, to determine the best time to schedule that in terms of when we're going to be reaching out and trying to engage more of the community. I'd like to do it shortly after that effort is made so that we can strike while the iron's hot and people might be more engaged instead of doing it beforehand and then kind of publicizing it more afterwards. So I would work with the public engagement manager to set the date for that additional meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Saad.
I would, in light of the comments from Vice Chair Gilmer, I would agree with him on this. So my motion is to add an additional makeup meeting after we consult with the public engagement person, and I'll leave it up to City Clerk Curran to decide on the best timing for it prior to March 25th.
Okay. Commissioner Walter.
Just a question, is it possible to have a meeting in a format that is a little less formal where we can sort of all look at a map and share ideas? I don't know if that's possible in the process, but I guess a question for the city clerk. Is it possible to have kind of a working session?
Thank you, Commissioner Walter. It's a great question. Yeah, we could definitely schedule meetings as, a workshop, so to speak. Maybe having it either hybrid or in person. It would be agendized as a regular meeting, having a quorum of the IRC present. The public would be encouraged to join and participate. But yeah, we can schedule, as I'm calling it, a workshop, opposed to like a formal meeting. I would say it would probably be best to consider it as a hybrid meeting, only because of social distancing. The chambers, you can only social distance so much, but that is definitely something that staff can explore.
Okay. Vice Chair Gilmer.
Sorry, that was raised in error.
Any further comment from the commission? Okay, so I would just add that I am open to adding a meeting. I am trying to be mindful of the concept of quality over quantity, and what I'm sensing from Commissioner Saad's comments and Commissioner Gilmer's is to also make sure that if we have a meeting and for future meetings that we are providing meaningful opportunities for public engagement and taking into account Vice Chair Gilmer's comment about doesn't make much sense to go ahead and schedule one now before we've had a chance to evaluate our public engagement efforts, so that that extra meeting that we do have and our future meetings are meaningful and productive from the standpoint of obtaining the maximum amount of public engagement in the maps we're considering. So I guess I would have one other question for the Assistant City Attorney. I'm a little bit rusty on my parliamentary process, but how, if we were to table any action on this item, discuss public engagement on item E2, and then come back to this and consider timing of a potential additional meeting, how do we go about doing that?
Well, you would need a motion to table. And
That part I knew.
it'd have to be seconded and of course supported by a majority.
Okay.
But that could supersede the pending motion that's on the table now. I would say that you could also take a vote. Before we take the vote, though, we would need to confirm with the maker of the second that they agree to the amendment that the Commissioner Sod made before we vote. And I would just say that we could vote on this now, and then the direction given to staff on the item. Sorry, I moved around my agendas, so I'm not sure which agenda number it was, but there's a discussion later in the agenda about the process. And so the direction could be given on a later agenda, a later time on the agenda about when that meeting should take place.
Okay, I think I like that latter suggestion. It's a little bit simpler. So we have the motion by Commissioner Sod. Okay, I see your hand up. Commissioner Sod, yes.
I'm just suggesting if it makes easy to withdraw my motion until we discuss the public engagement part, I would be happy to do so. So we don't complicate things unless we go with the city attorney's recommendation as well and postpone the voting until we discuss the engagement. I'm flexible. I'd like to hear your opinion.
Let's just go ahead and take a vote on the motion that is on the table. And I think depending on how we all feel about, or how we all feel after our discussion on public engagement, we can revisit the particulars of when and how format-wise we conduct a potential additional meeting, and then provide that direction to the city clerk. So Ms. Sandoval, can you please state the motion and take a vote?
I can. I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sod to schedule an additional makeup meeting in consultation with the public engagement manager to take place prior to March 25th.
And
Seconded by, yeah.
Sorry, just to confirm, we need to
Mhm.
confirm from Commissioner Earhart that she agrees with the amendment that Commissioner Sod made.
Commissioner Earhart, can you confirm that you still second this motion?
I do, yes.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Any final commission discussion or questions on this motion and second? Okay, hearing none by roll call vote, Commissioner Ballas,
Agreed?
Earhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Sod,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gilmer,
Yes.
and Chair Ariano.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are at, okay, agenda item E2, discuss and provide direction on the IRC's public engagement. City Clerk Heron. You have the
And
floor.
actually, Chair, if I may just backtrack quickly to E1, is there any direction to staff regarding hybrid format? Do you want us to explore that for some meetings, all meetings, no meetings?
I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
Um,
And if you'd like, I can drum up some, I can review the schedule and see how staff can make some hybrid meetings with what we currently have, and then possibly including the meeting that we're adding. And then I can return that to the commission at the next meeting, if everyone's comfortable with the next meeting being virtual only.
okay.
Chair Ariano, it may be
Yes.
helpful for you to conduct a sort of a straw poll of the commissioners, just, with the shaking of the head or.
Right. So, since we're not really taking any formal action, we will just do a straw poll. You guys just want to do thumbs up if you guys are interested in having City Clerk Karen plan on the logistics of a potential hybrid meeting for the meetings taking place after, what do we have here? After starting with the February 24th meeting. Vice Chair Gilmer, Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Baus. That's pretty much everybody. So
It's definitely a majority.
Perfect. I will return an item to the commission at the next meeting. Thank you so much.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we can go on to E2, which is discuss and provide direction on the Independent Redistricting Commission's public engagement. I do have a very brief introduction for this item. So staff had sent the IRC a worksheet, which was included as attachment A to the staff report. And on that worksheet, the commissioners were asked to consider who the target outreach groups were, potential stakeholders, potential components of in-person engagement or hybrid meetings, the digital component, such as the website and the online mapping tool, potential locations to hold our events and or meetings, any other potential tricky issues such as COVID, and then what do we do with the public input? I do appreciate that majority of the IRC did return those to staff, which we will be reviewing later, but I did want to open up the discussion and just kind of discuss what was in the attachment in that worksheet. And we do have Clay Curtin, who is our public engagement manager, here to help kind of field some questions and also kind of, help guide us to a workable and doable and effective and efficient public engagement plan. And that does conclude my introduction for this item. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sandoval, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on item E2, public engagement?
At this time, if any members of the public would wish to comment on item E2, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand virtually. This will be our final call for public comment on item E2. And seeing no hands raised, Chair Ariano, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Turn it back to the commission. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any comment or discussion on the public engagement, the worksheets, questions generally? Commissioner Hill had your hand up, but then it went down. Was that a? Okay, there we go. Commissioner Hill.
I wonder if we might start this discussion with each commissioner in turn, just sort of reading off the different ideas that they had, and then we could come up with some sort of a format for adding or evaluating each idea.
Okay. Commissioner Ballas.
Judy, City Clerk shared the screen and now I can't find my hand down button. Just imagine my hand is down.
Commissioner Saad.
Chair Ariano, I just want to voice my what I said in passing during my previous comments today is that I really think that we have only 2 months left, approximately, for the submission of the map. I know public engagement take time normally to formulate a campaign or put an ad in the newspaper or table, or to be able to get that public engagement. I think we need to get started ASAP on that purpose on that action, to be able to have some meaningful impact with our activities. So I personally have a feeling that we're a little bit lagging behind on the public engagement, and as compared to what we saw other cities around us or other entities have done so far through either ads in newspapers or maybe direct engagement through emails or prodding of their community to submit information. Just want us to put this on the front burner and then get some traction going as soon as possible. That concludes my comment.
Okay. Anybody else? So I like Commissioner Hill's suggestion, and I think we can address Commissioner Saad's concern as we walk through our comments, because there was at least one question on there talking about methods of public engagement, actually maybe two or three. So Commissioner Hill, did you want to lead off?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I too am having trouble finding my controls, but remedied it. So my comments fall into ideas for general distribution of updates and news about the IRC and the redistricting via digital formats. And then I just had a couple of thoughts about groups that we might want to reach out to. So I'm going to begin. Oh, and I had one idea about a physical location we might try to cover. I think one organization that we might directly contact is the Bellhaven Action, which is a civic organization. I think it was started by Cecilia Taylor, our former mayor, and they are plugged into what's important in Bellhaven neighborhood. So I think because redistricting really changed the game for Bellhaven, it would be important to try to get a hold of them. My second thought with regard to that neighborhood was possibly the school district, but that would be just as a, to relay a message more than to actually engage. So next, my digital ideas. Oh, Clerk Heron, I didn't mean the Menlo Park School District, although that's an excellent idea. I did mean the Ravenswood School District. I was continuing to think about the Bellhaven neighborhood. And again, the school district idea is probably not our first choice. So with regard to digital channels and digital publicity that we could do, one idea I had was the digital platform called Nextdoor. I seem to remember that there were announcements on Nextdoor from the city or maybe the public utilities. And I wasn't sure if such an announcement were possible. And so while I turn off my home phone, I will suggest that there are a lot of people who are active on Nextdoor, and that if the city could post an announcement in each of the neighborhoods within the city, then that might be good. I'd be willing to help find out how that works if that's not something that's known, but I bet it is. And the other thing I thought was that we may be bumping up against a potential issue, which was asked for in this sheet. That potential issue is a citywide unawareness and lack of understanding of voting districts and the redistricting process. I'm not saying every single last individual isn't aware, but I think we all agree that there could be a better understanding of district voting. And therefore, it seemed to me that it might merit something front and center on the city website. And I don't know how much of a destination that particular site is. However, if we were able to talk to the city webmaster, we might have a small box on the Menlo Park homepage that would be titled Contribute to Menlo Park's Voting District Design, click here, and it would take people to our page. That is my other digital idea. And lastly, I have an in-person location, which is the farmers markets, both the Sunday morning one and also the new Wednesday evening one. I don't know how we would have a presence there unless the commissioners ourselves are staffing tables. So I don't have a plan. It's just an idea. That's everything that I have written.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody like to go second in sharing some of their input from the worksheet we all completed? Commissioner Saad.
Thank you. I seem to be talking too much today, but since I have the ideas connected very much to those that were just made, I would definitely agree about having some presence, physical presence at the farmers market. I also suggested in my communication and my input to the form is that we can maybe somewhere at Safeway, in places my concern is I don't want to put too much emphasis on the digital, because that would give people who don't have easy access to the internet, unfair a chance to voice their opinion. So I would like to balance it also with physical presence, maybe farmers market, maybe shopping, popular shopping, grocery shopping areas. I leave it to the rest of the commission to be able to decide. I said Trader Joe's, I said in my input, and also Safeway, but I totally agree that a physical presence is important for interaction. I also suggest that having small flyers like a fact sheet that we can hand out for people to take home and read, so we don't have to have a lot of interaction. These days, interactions happens behind masks, and sometimes it's hard to be able to carry on a full-blown conversation. But the small flyers or handouts would be helpful for people to take home and be able to consider and review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other hands? Thank you, Commissioner Walter.
Yeah, I think a lot of good ideas have been mentioned. Some other ones are to, well, it's just to build on the fact sheet idea. I agree, I think there's confusion in people I talk to of like, are we changing the fact that we are in district? Are we re-looking at that or not? So I could imagine a one-page fact sheet that could be both printed and put on a website that would basically say, you know, what are we doing? When are we doing it? What input will we like? And then some sort of email address where people can just send in a comment. So that's one idea. Second idea is, I'm wondering if the city team has suggestions from other outreach they've done. It'd be nice if we do their regular list of outreach they do for things of this type.
Anybody else? Thank you, Commissioner Walter. Anybody else? So, Ms. Herron or any other members of city staff, that actually I think is kind of a good segue into.
I believe
Chair,
that
there are some hands
there's
up.
2 other hands.
Oh, I do see hands. Commissioner Earhart.
Thank you. I've submitted several suggestions to the city staff, but I did want to go through and augment a few of the ideas that have been suggested. So in addition to the bigger grocery stores, we should also keep in mind the small neighborhood markets where people might be more willing to listen to someone talking to them rather than just bypassing the typical, I know at Safeway, there are often people out front asking for money or for support for causes, and people tend to walk by them pretty quickly. But at a smaller market, there's a better chance of engaging with them. I also wanted to mention that Facebook or Meta now has the mobile community market that goes on Sundays in the Bellhaven neighborhood. So we should try to include some information there. I gave a list of several neighborhood organizations or local community-based organizations that serve particularly the Hispanic population in this area. A lot of the organizations are based in East Palo Alto, but at least from Bellhaven, many residents there are familiar with and use those services. And so perhaps if we came up with maybe a draft paragraph or two, we could ask them to put in their newsletter or in their communications with their clients, just to help spread the word and make sure they know people from Menlo Park. And this is something that they should be aware of. Additional community health and wellness sites, the Ravenswood Health Center, the Fair Oaks Health Center, and the Mouton Multicultural Wellness Center. I listed several churches. Again, perhaps they could include just a small item or something in their newsletters or in their communications with their parishioners. The Ecumenical Hunger Program is a food bank that would be helpful. And since parents often get information from the schools, I think we should hit every school and every youth serving organization we can to, again, at the same time, put in some and spread some sort of awareness, even the Boys and Girls Club, after school programs, preschool programs, just to try to catch the adults. One other change I made on my sheet, in the very top where it talks about target outreach groups, I would change the wording that was there to, instead of Menlo Park voters, I would change it to adults of voting age who live in Menlo Park. Just so that we're catching everyone. And we also want to make sure we catch residents of underserved populations. And I also want to make sure that someone had raised a question with me about whether our website, the redistricting website, makes mention of paper maps and where people can find them and how they can submit them. So I'd want to make sure we include that information. I think that wraps up my comments.
Give Ms. Herron a chance to catch up here on the keyboard. Vice Chair Gilmer.
Thank you. I'll just add a few comments. I like the idea of next door. I would also encourage us to work with the Menlo Almanac in regards to either a columnist, one of the people who write the general stories, or an opinion piece encouraging people to get involved. One thing that's kind of come up to my attention, and it makes a lot of sense, when we were sort of forming this committee, we wanted representatives from every district because the people in those districts know them better than, like, I don't know District 5 very well. We should use that leverage to have the people in each district identify the right locations. So for the Willows, for example, if it were me looking for something, I'd be Cafe Zoe, the Willows Market, and potentially the Hacienda Market on Willow Road to capture the majority of our neighborhood. Maybe we could, and this is something that we would have to discuss in more detail. We've got a little bit of a budget. Maybe we could have sit-down coffee sessions with the person from that district open to anybody in the community who wants to come by, buy them a cup of coffee for whoever shows up and discuss it. So that's, more on the local side. The farmers market's a great idea, but doing it in each of the districts, if we had time and we had the commitment to do that, would be a great option. And then finally, the other comment I had was Commissioner Walter talked about doing a one-page on what the redistricting is about. I think one section that we need to have, in addition to that, is how it affects, why it's important, how it affects the individuals, why, knowing the district you're in and what your representative does and how this can affect you over the next 10 years of this district is important to make it sort of a personal connection for them. That's all I had to add.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Gilmer. And I like your list of places in the Willows. However, you did forget one of the most important institutions, which is Donut Delight. My children would be very upset if we did not include Donut Delight.
I understand that completely, but people generally don't congregate there. They're in and out with mine. The reason I did not hit that location.
Commissioner Ballas, please.
Thanks. Yeah, so I was just gonna piggyback on some of the suggestions. I had been thinking about the places people go every day. So I think the markets, and as far as District 5 goes, Safeway is definitely sort of a major, that Shared Heights Shopping Center in general is a major point. Everybody goes through it at least a couple times a week. And then there's another there's the French Farmers Market on Wednesday nights now. That, at least when the weather's good, has been pretty well populated. Then the other I thought, which this may be crazy, but I don't know who does this, but there's a banner over Santa Cruz Avenue that is used to announce everything from the Nutcracker to, Boy Scouts. I'm not sure. I don't know who controls that banner. It's just the big one that goes over by Pete's Coffee there. Maybe we can announce something there, get involved. I don't think I've ever seen a political sort of get involved, in your community or voting thing on it, but why not? And then the other one was just coffee shops. I mean, do we have Pete's and Starbucks and more Pete's and Starbucks? If there's any local bistros, what is the one? There's another one in downtown, Shishi Coffee Shop, but places like that are places that people go multiple times a week.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Hill.
Thank you for letting me speak again. As I was listening to this wonderful idea about having sit downs and discussions in coffee shops, it struck me that we might want to have an attraction for people to come, and particularly within a given district, that attraction may well be their city council member. And so that brought up a larger idea. How much attention is the city council paying to the possible impacts of redistricting, and are they willing to assist us in getting out the word by having a coffee chat that would include their IRC representative from that district at least once before the map goes out? And are they willing to include a mention of that to in any outgoing newsletters that they have?
Thank you. Vice Chair Gilmer.
Sorry, for some reason my hand keeps getting raised accidentally.
Okay. Actually, I'm actually raised.
Commissioner Ballas, is that a?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to double click on Commissioner Hill. So I think that's a really good idea. For one, I think the city council representatives are well known. They would be a draw. If you actually engage people in conversation, I think it's a lot better than just having, a flyer outside of a place. And we could do those things in parks. You know, there's that park in downtown is right across from Pete's. There's the Sharon Park in District 5. And every district's got at least one park. It'd be a great place to have big vat of coffee set up and a council member. So.
Or a farmer's market, I guess.
Could do it at a farmer's market. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
okay.
I just wonder how we would go about engaging the city council and asking them to support us in this by hosting a coffee that we would attend by district.
Commissioner Saad.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. Also, it's I wonder if the interaction with the city council member would infringe on the fact that we're supposed to be independent in that sense, so we can have the process has to be disengaged from them. That's one comment. My second comment is someone mentioned Almanac, which I also mentioned in my input back to the city staff. Kate Bradshaw, the writer from the Almanac, has been covering our city very, very eloquently and comprehensively, and I think we should engage her to be able to see if she can write a piece and on this process. She's very well informed. I always try to follow the pieces that she writes, and my recommendation is for the if we engage for the public engagement piece is to get her involved as well. Thank you.
Think everybody else has had an opportunity to speak. I think those are all excellent ideas. Mirrors a lot of the things that I included in my responses. One aspect of the worksheet that I didn't hear anybody touch on is the last question: what happens with public input? The prompt was, if a resident asks what happened to my input suggestion, what are you going to say? And my response to that was that we ought to aggregate and organize in one place all of the public input we receive as much as possible. So on the map website, it's nice because you can see all of the maps that folks have prepared, all of the drawn rather, the communities of interest that they've drawn. But I do think that it would be useful, at least in our exercise of evaluating the maps, to have a single place to go back and refer to the various items of input, methods of input, suggestions that we've received from the public as we come back and do the work that we've been tasked with. So other than that, I being mindful of the time, I did just want to ask city staff, if you could respond to some of our ideas, perhaps make some suggestions on how to put some of these ideas into action, recognizing that many of them are probably a little bit ambitious given the time we have, but would certainly like to hear from you in terms of how we can foster as much public engagement as we can in a meaningful way in the time that we have left.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the commissioners. This is great information. I will let you know that we will be compiling all of the received forms that you guys have submitted kind of into one place, and the city clerk's office, as well as the public engagement office, will be working through that to kind of establish that plan. I did want to introduce Clay at this time. I do know that he's got some information and can probably answer a couple of your questions, provide some clarification on like next door, on the flyers and handouts that we've already begun doing, any mailers. I know that we are scheduling a citywide mailer to go out and what's on that city website. So I will go ahead and stop sharing our screen so we can see all of our cameras. And again, I'll invite Clay Curtin to provide some clarification to the commission. Thanks, Clay.
Thank you, Judy, and good evening, everyone. I'm Clay Curtin, the city's public engagement manager. And I want to thank you for all of those comments. That was very helpful. And a lot of them are you mentioned tactics and strategies that we try to use often. Some of them were I think they were insightful. And I wanted to thank Commissioner Saad for recognizing that public engagement takes time. That's usually the biggest thing working against us when we have city projects. To go over the list, a few of the items, I know the city clerk's office has been compiling a list of organizations to include outreach to community-based organizations and nonprofits. A few people mentioned Nextdoor, and I just wanted to share for Menlo Park, we have approximately 20,000 people on Nextdoor. And for most of our posts, I can tell how many people can view the post or have viewed the post. And right now that's averaging about 6%. So it's kind of like Facebook in the sense that their algorithm limits the number of people who see it. And so we have a lot of members, but not everyone sees it. That effectiveness increases the more likes, comments, shares. So the more people who comment on the post will drive that up, and more people end up seeing it based on their algorithm. So that's helpful when you comment or you encourage your neighbors to do so. Regarding placement on the city website, a lot of people, if you're aware, we have the kind of the old city website that's going to be in kind of an archive mode for the rest of the calendar year, and the new website is in a beta mode. But we could definitely place something on the homepage of sites. The farmers markets, I think someone noted that, one of the challenges is staffing the booth if you're going to be at a booth or handing out information. So that would be the only limitation there. I think it would be excellent to try to get kind of FaceTime with people at those areas where they are naturally, like you mentioned, the grocery stores, markets, distribution sites. The handout idea, I think that we already have a flyer in the works to be kind of a handout. I know we had ordered paper maps to be distributed definitely at city facilities, but we could also discuss where else to place those so that people could fill out a paper map and submit it. Let's see. Engaging with the Almanac, they pick up news from us all the time, but engaging with them to kind of ask for more is always helpful. And opinion pieces or column, I know they have a feature where anyone can basically post their own story or their own comments. So I think that's all good. The street banners, that's managed by the city. So Public Works is the ones who oversees that. I know in a normal year, the over the street banners that they're at both ends of Santa Cruz Avenue, one by Pete's and I think one closer to maybe like Bank of America. In a normal year, those fill up almost instantly after the first of the year. The reservations are filled. During COVID, I think it's been a little bit different. So we should explore that and see if that's an opportunity, if there's openings for that fit our time frame. Yeah, and what I was gonna say too, we have a mailing list. We only have about 150 people that are on the redistricting mailing list now that get emails. They've requested to be notified of agendas and events. But within our whole contact system, most of our we have it broken down by district, and most districts have 4,000 to 5,000 people on the contact list. District 1 is lower. We only have 2,000 or 2,500 people on that, so about half of what the other districts are. But we are constantly working to grow that. And I think that's all I have based on the notes I took, but I'm happy to answer any questions or try to provide any other information that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Chair Ariano. Mr. Curtin, I'm wondering, unfortunately, the process of unmuting has caused me to forget what I was going to say. So with acute embarrassment, I'm going to lower my hand.
No problem.
While
Yes,
Commissioner Hill
I
collects her
apologize.
thoughts. Oh, go ahead.
The navigation on the redistricting page of the city website, there's nothing that calls out, please click here to participate in redistricting, to give your input to redistricting. The only way to get to the page that has the mapping tool is by clicking on a couple of linked words within a paragraph, which do not clearly say click here to participate. There is a nice big button for click here to be on the newsletter. I wonder if we wouldn't get better results if we had a nice big button that said click here to participate and give your input.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a great idea. The website right now, I think, is mostly built upon prescribed language from the Secretary of State's office, but that's a great suggestion and a needed improvement. Thank you.
Anybody else? So if I could just ask one question in terms of the things that you guys are working on, your flyers, webpage copy, things like that. How or when do you expect those things to be out and circulating?
Sure, I can answer that question. For the flyers that Public Engagement Manager Clay Curtin had mentioned, those have all been physically posted, again, at all open city facilities. Let me see, I think I have a list here. Bear with me just one moment, apologize. Here we go. So it's been posted at the Arriaga Gymnasium, the Arriaga Rec Center, the Bellhaven Branch Library, the Bellhaven Child Development Center, Burgess Pool, City Hall, the main branch library, the Children's Center, the Police Department, and we did distribute some to the Chamber of Commerce, who's assisting us in distributing those downtown. Again, as Clay had mentioned, we are working on the paper map. I do believe we have those, and those should be out fairly soon. We've reached out to our libraries, and we are setting up stations directly for people to do redistricting. We'll have the districtor tool up and available with instructions on how to use it. And we'll also have paper maps available if they just want to submit a paper map. When we're speaking of the mailer, we did produce a mailer. It's been printed and it should be delivered Monday. So we are hoping to mail those out on Monday. It is a 2-page mailer in both English and Spanish. And I do want to preface that the flyer is in English and Spanish as well. But on the mailer, it's just a brief information on 1, requesting community input, 2, what is redistricting, 3, what to do with redistricting. It talks about the online mapping tool as well as the paper maps, and then of course contact information and website information. So again, a lot of those things have been completed. Some of them will be completed early next week. So that's kind of an update on the flyer and mailers and a little bit of the outreach that we've already begun.
Thank you. I'm sure I'm not the only one who looks forward to seeing all of those things when they become available. Unless there is anything else from the commissioner, we can wrap up this item and move to the final item of the agenda. This is our, I guess, actually second to last. Item F1, first public hearing to receive public input regarding the composition of the city districts. Ms. Herron.
Thank you, Chair. So as stated, this is technically our first public hearing to receive public input on the composition of the city's districts. So it's at this time that we hold this public hearing to identify the neighborhoods, communities of interest, and any other local factors that should be considered or used as building blocks before we begin drafting the maps. We do invite the public to provide any concerns or if they have ideas on the composition of the city's districts to do that now as soon as the chair opens the public hearing. Of course, there are considerations for federal requirements on the map. And briefly to state those, population equity has to be across all districts. Race cannot be the predominant factor or criteria when drawing districts. And of course, compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibits districts that dilute minority voting rights or encourage a majority minority district. There's a lot more information within the staff report, but that does conclude my brief introduction of this item.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'm happy to see that we are taking to heart our emphasis in hearing from the public more and less from ourselves for this item. Ms. Sandoval, do we have any members of the public who wish to provide input?
I see a hand already. I'll go ahead and say this really quickly for anyone who may have forgotten. Anyone wishing to comment on item F1, first public hearing to receive input regarding the composition of the city's districts, should engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of the screen. Or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, you can press *9. We have one hand up now. Oop, that's my
Ms.
hand.
Sandoval,
That's not the right one.
Before
Yes.
we begin, I'd ask the chair to formally open the public hearing.
Got it. Thank you very much.
So we will now formally open the public hearing on this item. And we will start with Ms. Jones.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you and thank you so much for your thoughtfulness with doing outreach. I see that we'll have an excellent process. I wanted to let you know that I have posted a map. It's called the To a Haven COI, and it gives it's for the communities of interest from the 2020 blocks. I've also started posting the maps, the draft maps from the 2018 process, and I will be labeling those 2018 and then the number of the map that was submitted to the advisory committee last in 2018. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jones. Any other members of the public?
If there are any other members of the public who would wish to comment on the F1 first public hearing to receive input regarding the composition of the city's districts, please press *9 if you are on a landline or cell phone, or engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. As of now, Chair Ariano, that is all the hands we have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sandoval, and thank you again, Ms. Jones. We will close the public hearing and bring the item back to the commission for discussion. And I see Commissioner Earhart's hand raised, please.
Yes, thank you. I just had a couple of things I was hoping to get clarified. First, when people submit paper maps, are those going to be scanned and posted on the website as well, or how will those be shared more broadly than people having to come and see them in person? And then the second question is, on the site where people can submit their maps, there were a lot of tests done, and I find it very confusing to look at that page and see what's actually being submitted for consideration and what were just tests or showing people how the tool works. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to either group the tests under a certain heading, or maybe just get rid of those, just to make sure that we're looking at what is actually being submitted for consideration? Thank you.
Through the chair, Commissioner Earhart, thank you for your questions. I might call upon Alex Sands from GeoInnovo for the first question related to paper maps. I don't know if there is a way that those can be easily imposed onto the website, or if they have to be considered separately. So Alex, if I can have some assistance with that.
So for paper maps submitted to the city, city clerk and her team have been doing a great job. We've actually created some map templates for people to fill out their submissions. Those will be distributed to public locations. Once those maps are submitted to those city facilities, they'll be forwarded to the GeoInnovo team, and we will go through the process of incorporating, basically turning those paper submissions into digital GIS data, geographic data, and making those maps available in the mapping tool. So you'll see as we go through the process and we make our mapping tools available, we have Districtor, which is a submission tool right now, but as we go through the process, we're also going to have a web map that shows everything that's been submitted, which we will be taking those paper submissions into account as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate that. And Commissioner Earhart, would you mind repeating the second part of your question?
Sure. I just wondered if there was a way to group the test maps that were done, or delete those, or some way make it more clear of the maps that are actually being submitted for consideration.
Thank you for that clarification, and I'll return to Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Commissioner Earhart. Yes, we can go through and delete those test maps. I think that's just a good housekeeping item in general. So yeah, we'll definitely go through the mapping tool probably in the next few days, and just tidy all that up. And now that we have we actually have been receiving some public map submissions so far, which is great to see, especially since we're just starting the IRC meetings. So yeah, we'll definitely get that situation resolved, good to go, and we definitely look forward to more public comment on the maps.
Commissioner Vice Chair Gilmer.
I have a question about drawing the maps. I know that we've got some things that we're trying to stay within, population equity being a very high priority. I'm wondering how that population equity competes against physical boundaries. Like a lot of the maps drawn in the districts will use roads. Middlefield Road separates District 2 from District 3, I believe. The freeway separates District 1 and District 2. How important is it to maintain those boundaries versus to get as close population equity as possible?
City Clerk Karen, I can take that if you like.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that.
Yes, Vice Chair Gilmer, that's an excellent question. So you do have some there is a 10% variance that we're allowed, that gives us some wiggle room in terms of population balance. Obviously, as close to zero as we can get is ideal, but we also understand that, and as a part of this process, one of those things one of those criteria that the IRC is going to need to take into consideration is the ability to create boundaries that are recognizable, that have, regular shapes, so to avoid, boundaries that may look irregular or maybe a bit odd in their geography. So there is that little bit of wiggle room to alter the population balance somewhat. Both criteria are important, but that is definitely those are definitely two criteria that we do have some wiggle room with in the redistricting process. I hope that helps to clarify your question.
It does. I'm not sure which one ranks as a higher priority, but I guess we can just take a look at some maps that are drawn slightly differently, one based on population equity, one based on physical boundaries, and work through that.
Definitely, and those are things that the members of the IRC will be discussing, and I've been listening on the meeting. You guys are already having quite a robust discussion about all the different outreach options and how the maps are going to be submitted and all that. So yeah, definitely looking forward to hearing your input and the input from the community as well as we go through the process.
Alex, I had a question for you actually, and maybe for Ms. Herron as well. I was taking a test drive on Districtor over the weekend, and I saw that we had 16 or 17 different maps that folks had already drawn and submitted. How will these be presented to us for consideration? I guess as we sort of really get into the work and the process of this, and hopefully start to see a lot more of the maps, completed surveys, other types of input, how will you all be organizing that and presenting that to us for kind of a focused analysis and focused discussion?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chair Ariano. So we do have we're actually we've already started development of a web map, which is basically going to be like a central repository to view all the public submissions plus the proposed maps from Geo Novo. So as an industry practice, the consultant generally creates three proposed plans, and then we're also going to compile all the public submissions into a publicly available web map, which that'll be available for the Independent Redistricting Commission as well, and that applies to public submissions for districts, which is done through the Districtor tool. In addition, I think you mentioned this during your comment, that also applies to communities of interest, which are submitted through our GeoCIM or Community Input App tool. So there will be in short, there's going to be a central repository, a web map so that everybody can view and analyze the public submissions.
Good. I was worried that we were just going to be wading through a dozen plus maps and trying to whittle down that number as we go through the next few weeks. So I'm happy to hear that we'll have your help in that.
Exactly. And also just if I could add one other thing as well. We're also going to be analyzing all of the public submissions to determine if they are viable. So if, for example, if they're within the 10% population variance, if they have districts that are geographically compact and contiguous. So we're only going to provide you with those maps that are eligible to move on to the next step in the process.
Excellent, thank you. Vice Chair Gilmer, is that your hand raised?
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Okay, no problem. Do any of my other fellow commissioners have any other comment or things that they would like to discuss? Okay. Seeing none, I think we can wrap up item F1. Thank you again to the members of the public who attended, commented, listened in. That brings us to item G of the agenda, reports and announcements. Do any of the IRC commissioners have any announcements or reports to share since the December 18th meeting? Seeing none, I look forward to your announcements next time on your meetings with your respective council members. And I think that is it for our agenda. So forgive me, Ms. Herron, do we need a motion to adjourn?
No motion is required, Chair. You can adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you again, everybody from the public, fellow commissioners. The meeting is adjourned. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening, everybody.